going to be a little bit parochial and start off with a pitch on Grimshaw. If I get it to work. My topic, architecture of pedagogy and urban renewal. A vertical high school is just one part of that. We're a global practice. We're operating across a number of different continents. We have over 500. Why is that important? Because we're designing schools for the possibility which that represents to many people. This idea of globalism is something which is now becoming a really interesting part, and why you're here. We work across many typologies, from transport, learning, and obviously urban workplace. Again, all the threads of that come into how you consider the design of a school, where it goes, and what its end purpose is. This is a scheme that I'm going to present Arthur Phillip High School predominantly, which is a competition scheme that we won with Blyvell and Neild, 6 Ideas, who are education consultants who worked on the UK's Futures program, Building Futures program, and Arup doing all the engineering and Aspect the landscape architects. We've had 180 stakeholder engagements from design, and we're on site at the moment. And it's not just a vertical school, it's a new educational prototype for future-focused education with a transition phase from the current curriculum. It's a brand new building typology as well, which has been completely engineered. It's been rapid. We will have gone from award to completion, construction completion on this project in 3.5 years. And that includes fundamental changes to the industrial legislation of teachers to enable them to work in a building like this. City context. We've heard a lot about it. We all know about where population growth is going, but in Sydney, or in Australia, we also look at where productivity is. So in that sector, you'll see that Australia's economy has transitioned from a resource and economy to one of our knowledge services. And you can see there in our GDP that finance and construction are the biggest drivers, with mining still there and farming below. Why is that important? When we get to Sydney, Sydney is 24% of Australia's GDP. We don't have any mining and we don't have any farming. So the majority of Australia's GDP growth and the significant change is coming from our major East Coast cities. What's underpinning that financing construction is innovation, knowledge services, creative industries. The future of our nation, its health and prosperity, comes from education. It comes from its understanding of its place, its interaction into global economies. We are a global city where we are educating our children into that situation. We all know about the fascination of Sydney. We always talk about Parramatta. I love to use this term ironically, where settlement first occurred. But we all know that on this particular site, Arthur Phillip, we've uncovered, we've had 40,000 years of evidence of Aborigines on this site. So it is an interesting place to put this building. We call them, the two cities work in reciprocity, from one as the demographic centre and also the place where it's at the centre of how we address population growth, but also looking back to Sydney where it still remains the preeminent location of our global city. Even though the Greater Sydney Commission has got us working in 3 cities, Sydney is still the centre of where that productivity is focused. What does it mean for schools? All that, we've got a lot of schools to do, and as it came out in the papers today, a lot of the growth in schools is still relying on demountable classrooms. So building big, dense, quick schools is one of the key opportunities to address the pressures on education. Obviously, we all know Parramatta. I've got to move very quickly. Other thing about Parramatta, it's got some of the most diverse communities living there. So the department have chosen one of the most interesting places to build a new school prototype. And what does it mean to the city? The big thing about the schools now is that they're shared social infrastructure. So the facilities of a school become shared with the cities that they're building in. With Parramatta School, they've put a large school at the centre of the city. So learning at the heart of Centres for Urban Renewal. And again, back to that theme, as the understanding, the priority to understand its place within the world. Exchange can happen in many ways, including the ability to have digital interaction. Right, so school, 2,000 students, 17 stories, 1,000 students for the primary school. Teaching, we all know about we're going to address pedagogy here, which is about learning styles. Teaching used to be the didactic model in classrooms, which everyone knows about, but we're transitioning into future-focused learning in a vertical environment. What does that mean? We're talking about breaking down schools of that size into smaller communities. We call that the school within school model. We're moving to stage, not age learning, so all ages, all stages in communities, and project-based curricula. So learning through groups of people focusing on experimentation and group-based investigations. You'll hear about the STEAM uses, science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics. That's where the key innovation is being focused on at this moment. So, how do you design a school? Well, obviously, we're moving away from periods where you step through the day through a series of times. We have now, with the project base, you use your facilities to design your own learning format. So it's not as structured as what we understand. So this idea of how you structure movement becomes critical. Spaces are much more diverse, have greater volume. They're used for a variety of things. Okay, so with a school, 2,000 students, we've heard about Dunbar's number, which says what's the maximum amount of people you can have in a community. It's around 250. We're extending it to be around 3 to 330 for a school. So how that works with the primary school, we break it down to 3 communities plus a kindergarten. In the high school, it's based around 6 communities of around that 330. We put the communities in what we call home bases, where that's got all the needs that you have for your school day. So it's got outdoor learning, where you do your practical activities, where you have withdrawal rooms, bathrooms and storage and all the facilities. That's in a high school, it's much more diverse. It includes the library. You no longer have libraries as separable. They come to you. You have flexible learning, formal learning, informal learning, outdoor learning, seminars, and some labs as well. Staff are located within the community. And of course, all the needs are there. The historical derivation of the school, the classrooms that we know back from the 70s, breaking up in the 80s, having more flexible furniture, then moving into the 90s where classrooms have been adapting and opening up together. And then we move into the academy model, which works between up to a maximum height of 6 to 9 stories, where you get the flexible learning opening up into informal learnings connected through circulation, and it has many different types. So we're now talking, most of those schools in Australia which have been up to 6 to 9 stories are less than 1,000 students. So 2,000 students, 17 stories, big floor plates, big needs for circulation to work, to support access at a variety of spaces. So the 17 stories, we break it up, well, I'll talk about in a moment, between 3 home bases, which are over 2 stories, and we have steam floors in between base, middle and top. We also talk about the relationship between schools, universities and workplace, the intersection between millennials, Gen Y and Gen X, knowing that we're always designing for the future, not for the current or the past. And the focus on learning from learning to enterprise. So understanding what the purpose is behind learning. Learning is not the same as you go through different age developments. And again, I'll just run through this very quickly because I've already hit 15 minutes. So quickly, what it looks like. That should be an animation. I hope. No? I need it to work. Technology person, can I have a pause on the time frame? It's not playing. That's not good. I'll give it one more try. They said it would work. All right, that was the animation, which was just going to go all the way through the building. Right, improvise. how does it work? Now that you've seen what it looks like, now I'm going to show you how it works. So we talk about a transitioning model of a school, which is, it means that we have to understand the current curriculum. You can't go into the future without transitioning from the current. So while we've broken it up in 6 communities, they're based in years 7 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12, and we've curated what happens in those STEAM floors. It's based upon a classroom module of about 90 square metres, including circulation, which we then aggregate together into 15 modules. In those 15 modules, we then have outdoor space. Then we put in that space a mezzanine, and the mezzanine has what we call the cellular spaces, which can be used for traditional classroom teaching, or we can introduce some dry labs into it, or seminar rooms, or quiet spaces. And then you have the open learning, which has got the future focused learning in the double height spaces, which has got a whole series of different teaching furnitures which support it. We've got the outdoor learning space wrapping around it and adjacent to it, so that you can live in your community with your outdoor learning at any level in the building. The home base, the multi-purpose range of the home base we've gone through before, but the important things here, to state again, that everything occurs in that space. So in terms of moving up and down, if you want to, in a vertical school, you get to your home base, you can stay there for the day and just move up and down between the STEAM floors if you need to. And of course, we've situated it so that the levels at the base can be used by the community, and they've got drama, performance, sports, food, tech, and textiles. In the middle, it's got the intermediate levels focus on enterprise, which is the workshops and digilabs, and at the top we've got the science laboratories where they have the highest need on services, and on the primary school, of course, we have the rooftop terraces. The amount of outdoor space, so is the total site area is 30,000 square metres. The outdoor learning spaces are 31,000. So this idea is that you lose outdoor learning space. What we're saying, if you take your space and put it through the building, there's no loss. And this obviously is a school on an existing school, but we've increased the density by 100%. Going to the home bases, this is the structure, how they work. The L-shaped mezzanines sitting in front of or behind the double height space with the outdoor learning around it. The educators or the teachers now roam around. They've got their own little trolley, which they move around, and they've got their own staff hub within it. And then they begin to look like these spaces. Almost the height is important for getting the right level of environment, daylight, ventilation, but the volume that you need to get people looking across each other and interacting with each other, and to do that program or project-based learning. The outdoor learning spaces which are offered, they are outdoor, they're screened from the rain and some of the high level winds, and they have the vertical circulation, being that the lifts or the stairs meandering through it on all sides of the building. The thing here is that while they're exposed on some climate, they've always 2 on each level, so you can move around the building or up and down to get any place in the building which has got the right level of clemency. Acoustics is incredibly important. You've got the learning furniture, which provides the acoustic abatement for low and high frequency. If you don't get the acoustics right in these spaces, the buildings fail. Incredibly important, more important than vertical circulation. Bathrooms are an important part of how you design, because if students don't go to the toilet, there's big issues, and they don't in current schools because of the issues of bullying and also privacy. So these are fully contained, sealed bathrooms which face out for full observation and but privacy as well. So if you don't, teaching and going to the toilet allows students to focus on their learning. It's a really big inhibitor, especially to females. And so vertical circulation, we had to change the timetable. It's staggered timetabling. So the school each year cluster starts 15 minutes differently to each other. It changes the peak load, which keeping the vertical circulation by the lifts to a minimum, and then you focus on the stairs in between. And that's the key to it. No escalators. Escalators use unnecessary energy, and it's better for children to have the health of movement. And I'm 100% serious about that. And then as a structural thing, it's a systems-based building. So we've got the cores, which are concrete cores which keep the building stable with a steel frame. Steel frame's there because of adaptability, but also for its speedy construction. But it's a building where it becomes a pedagogical instrument. So the building teaches the student how it's made, how it's performed, and it is interactive, and it's designed to be modifiable. 6 lifts, only 6 lifts, when they drop off at each second level at each home base. Obviously there's a lift for each floor in terms of accessibility, but then you understand what the teaching program is. So we've got the more junior students down below, and intermediate in the middle, and the senior students up the top. That's how it fell out. It could have been completely different, and in the future we're looking where everyone mixes together in terms of stages. The lifting has been designed to enable that in combination with the stairs. It's also designed to cross-ventilate. 65% or about 60% of the year is under cross-ventilation mode, a little bit of extra cooling, a little bit of extra heating, and that comes from its own PV cells on top of its use, which is contributing to about 40% of the energy that it's actually making. So these schools become models of sustainability as an ethic. The volume allows an abundance of daylight at the high level. At the low level, you've got all the teaching services that you need. Everyone's writing on it, projecting, and that need for cross-ventilation. This is how the building works. So it's a new building type. It's got an internal core, it's got a peristitial space which is open and breathable, 80% open, but that gives sufficient screening from the rain and the high-level winds. It's got different densities on it in terms of where you move through it. The screen is very, very strong. It has to take full student loads when they're kind of throwing each other on it. It can't be scalable, and it's got to stop birds and all sorts of vermin getting there. So a very interesting facade to go onto a very interesting building. The back part, which encloses the space, which is a standard window wall with manually operated louvers and window openings. So going back, photovoltaic cells, about 40% of the energy usage is provided by the buildings. Structural frame I just spoke about. I'm going quick because I want to talk through things. This is a little model. Everything in the building is expressing itself. The idea is that students can understand their own internal environment and they can program it. So again, it's not something which is remote, and everyone can get on their own little programs and see how the building's working across the day. That'll be displayed. We'll have these little red light, green light when the temperatures are changing, but the students can refine that themselves. So the idea of the building is that it's a testing building, and that as we begin to know how it's used, you can change it. Wayfinding identity to actually understand your place in the building. And then this part of the public realm, which is both secured when it's in its day use, and then it's open in terms of its use by the community outside of school hours. Now, as the community gets more greatly involved in the school, we believe that need for such high-level security will begin to diminish. That's the objective, so that the school has an intention to be integrated into the public realm, even though at this transition phase it's still secured. But it is programmed to be a part of the community, and that doesn't mean just being open for use. It means that we've allocated a number of the ground level uses, whether it's the tiered learning spaces, the performance spaces, the gyms for markets. That becomes part of a curated program between the department and the school community and the council for its use. So as a school, at the centre of urban renewal, it becomes a pivotal point for community. The social agenda of our cities begins with our schools. And just looking at some of the spaces, there a very large gym which doubles up, cafes which activate your public realm interfaces, opening up in weekends for markets. And the final thing I want to talk about on the school is the cost. There's lots of reports saying, vertical schools are too expensive. what you're not getting value for money. Well, you are. The school completely fitted out, just under $4,000 a square metre. The average low-rise school is around 3,300, and an average commercial building fitted out is 4,500 square metre. So there is, in terms of its benefits, it gives you social infrastructure, public realm, and a school. Now, that typology, so it's pedagogical-led design. So it's not about designing an urban form and fitting in the classrooms or the tall building and making a school work. A school designed for the future, focused learning in a vertical environment, that's what the typology is. It can't be adapted into a commercial office building. And we have to consider school communities which go over 10 floors. This is just one we did, which FJMT won for the inner city school, but we took those same principles in where we lifted the school, had the public realm coming in. But it happens with universities as well. This is an approach for a building that we did for New Space at Newcastle. The point here is making that these vertical buildings, which have got innovative learning environments, are going to be inserted into high density regions in beautiful locations in lots of different contexts. And the thing is that they can work very well. They are publicly benefit oriented. And I think, you know, the next thing I'd like to say is, and probably the final point, is that where we live now in the community, everything's got to pay for itself. And these projects require a lot of investment when we've got a lot of schools to build. We're also planning the intensification of our town centres. The moment we see the need for schools is to enable intensification. We've got a vertical school model, which is now separate to the buildings which they're building adjacent. So if you can see in this model here, in our school, this is in Parramatta, so it's been planned. We have a 50-storey residential tower, which was approved only 18 metres away from our building. And that landowner enjoyed the full benefit of that uplift. Even though there's value capture now, it's still quite minor. I mentioned Aspire Tower, we won and lost it, but it was a project with 243 metres, but about 700 apartments. Where we are now, this is where we can consider, is that if you get the delivery of schools integrated into urban renewal centres, where they're not separable or they're not parasitical on each other, but if you begin to join them together, we have the ability to get self-funding or major contributions to the cost of schools through the opportunity for urban intensification on town centre sites, where the two could merge. And I could say the value capture of the Aspire Tower in Parramatta, which is only 300 metres away from the school, could have paid totally for the new high school. So the two could have been one if it was planned together. So that's just a topic for this forum, is that the holistic planning across all departments is, I think, is what the opportunity is to deliver urban intensification with innovative schools. Sorry? I can try the video, yeah. I'm going to go over time if I do. But yeah, if you can play it, that'd be great. Thank you.